So this is the ADE51 voltage controlled attack, hold, decay, sustain, release or triggered AHD attack, hold, decay envelope from Abstract Data. So this is a 3 or 5 stage envelope generator that can have exponential or linear curves on this button. We have time controls for attack, hold, decay, sustain, release. We can have a hold time of up to 2.5 seconds or nothing. Attack, decay and release, these three, will go from a millisecond, so super fast, transient, snappy envelopes up to 10 seconds. So you can get these great long evolving envelopes as well. We have CV control of attack, hold, decay, sustain, release, as well as a global time knob, which is fantastic at taking what is potentially a short and snappy envelope and just blooming the whole thing open and shut again. We also get CV over that, which is really cool. We have a gate input to address all 5 stages, a trigger input that can re-trigger while the gate is high if we're using the gates, or just be triggered for an attack, hold, decay envelope. We have our main output and an inverted output that is already voltage offset, so the peak of the envelope doesn't just flip down, we actually offset back up. So both outputs will go from 0 to 5 volts, which is really handy. Now I haven't felt the need to, but there's a jumper on the back to adjust the pot curve type. This is the taper of these knobs. It doesn't affect the time or the curve of the envelope, it's how this pot responds, how it feels to you. Here's an image from the manual, but I haven't felt the need to adjust this. The manual's fantastic, by the way, well worth a read. Let's get into some patches, both exploring the envelope, its times, its shape, its general feel. A more complex patch where it's all over the place in terms of modulation, creating a lot of varied, interesting modulation. And also another patch where we use CV to control the shape and movement within a bass line, which might be rubbing my own trumpet, but I think it's really cool. This module does it really well. So let's get stuck in. So let's explore these envelope shapes. Now we've had a rundown of the features. My gate input, the white cable going to the gate in, is this green trace on the bottom of Mordax Data. I'm going to be able to vary the gate length, which we will demonstrate how that affects the envelope shortly. The envelope itself is this blue trace in the middle. So if I was to add some sustain or time to these attack, hold, decay settings, you can see the envelope. And the pinky purple trace up top is just the audio. I'm using the ADE50 triple VCA. Go check out that video if you haven't, to process a triangle wave. And there's a sequence playing just to stop the repetition of one note being repeated over and over again. So with a pulse width of around 50-50 and a fairly fast rhythm for now, I will slow this down. Let's just check out some of these shapes. We'll open up the gate length. We've got exponential or linear shapes. Hold. Can go up to 2.5 seconds in time. And this is almost like an extra sustain stage. If this is the first time you've seen an AHDSR, attack, hold, decay, sustain, release, this will hold its envelope time at its peak between the attack and the decay. So if we got a attack and decay envelope, let's say a linear one, rather triangle-like in shape, we can add a sustain phase, which is a hold, at the peak of the envelope. Much more like an EMS-style trapezoid generator. it'll go from a millisecond. Let's go exponential on that decay. Making it really easy to dial in fast transient envelopes for more percussive bass patching. These do go right up to 10 seconds as well, and at this point I will point out that even with everything set all the way down, the time knob, blue knob top right, is going to open up all of those times. So it's great for a sweep or with CV. Just to completely morph the time and feel of this envelope. Sustain. Let's adjust the gate length. We'll sustain from nothing to full peak, as long as the gate is held. So with some sustain, and let's slow this down, slightly longer gate length, we can have this kind of dual sustain with the hold. So let's add a general sustain, some attack, some decay. Slow this down even more. We can then hold between attack and decay. Note that this envelope comes up, holds, then drops, sustains, and then drops off again, waiting for some release. And the gate will start that envelope again from the voltage it is at, rather than dropping to 0. So notice this drop, but with a high release setting, it's not dropping as low, meaning we're not getting those clicks on the re-gating or re-triggering and recycling of these envelopes. You could do all this with linear shapes. Again, let's slow this down even more. Let's have a bit more hold time. So you can see these more unique 5-stage envelopes. Now the trigger input has a dual functionality. When used in conjunction with the gate, it will re-trigger the input, causing the envelope to start generating again from the attack stage. Any re-trigger signal that's received after the attack and hold stages have completed, while the gate signal is still high, will cause the envelope to re-trigger from the CV level that the envelope was at when the re-trigger was received. So let's chuck in a rhythm to re-trigger this. Get the attack down so it's more percussive. I'm going to speed the whole thing up. So here's my new sped up envelope. And some re-trigger. Let's add some more notes into this re-trigger pattern. Pattern again. Here's just the gate and the retrig. So the retrigger and the gate can be really interactive with shorter envelope times for decay, attack and hold. All that re-trigger comes through, but with a longer attack and hold, it won't re-trigger until those phases are done. So you can actually play around with the perceived rhythm. Go exponential again. And again, the time knob perfect for changing the whole feel, re-triggering or otherwise. Now without a gate, we can simply use the trigger to generate AHD envelopes. So sustain has no effect, neither does release. Hold is how long it will hold the peak of the envelope. We can still attack. Notice it still won't trigger itself when that hold time and attack is too long. So there's our rhythm. But with a longer attack, we can cut some of these notes out. So CV over these stages again means we can play around with this rhythm, just from a simple gate and trigger. So that's a general premise and envelope shapes and how this works regarding the 5-stage envelope and the time and the trigger and gate input. Let's check out some patches where we're using this with lots of CV and really exploiting what this thing can do. So the ADE 51 can provide gorgeously complex modulation shapes and also mirror image versions with the inverted out. The positive output of the envelope here is this green trace on the Mordax datascope. The negative output is the blue trace. So as you would expect, this is a mirror image of each other. Looks quite nice on the scope, but I am using both of these for modulation in this patch. Let's just check out what this is doing to the main synth sound. Let's just listen for a minute. So there's plenty of shapes there, and I'm throwing lots of CV at this. The blue LED on the jack there is the gate signal that's coming in. The red is the retrigger. And you can see in here we're getting great complex modulation out of this envelope. It takes to whatever CV you want to throw at it beautifully, and the gate and retrigger works really well too. I'm sending different skipped clock divisions into this. Let's add in some other elements to the patch. Have this sound, which is a noisy feedback driven patch. This is taking the modulation, these same two signals that the main bass sound is, for its tonal modulation. There's then this sound, which other than sharing pitch information, is unrelated in terms of the modulation. And some effects. Reverb, noise, bit of tube drive before it hits the reverb. Now let's just let this play out with all the layers happening. Again, that noise, the main sound, and this little harmony that's unrelated modulation-wise. As there's several elements of random, both fluctuating and stepped, to these CV inputs, and some random skipping to this retrigger and the gate pattern, this will keep developing. So again, let's just listen before moving on to the next patch. So for this last patch, I want to go through in a kind of techno beat orientated context why you would want CV over all these stages. Well, because this is why. But let's just check out this patch. So they're my drums, there's some compression, some noise. Lots of fun stuff we can do with that. But this is the bass sound, and I'm using the ADE 51 to open up my filter. Now in this kind of patch, let's put the drums back in. playing around with the filter cutoff as well as the envelope, so I'm just going to manually move the filter's cutoff knob. Can provide a lot of expression and a lot of fun. Now, one thing we will note with this envelope, I have varying gate lengths on each step, meaning we're getting different envelope stages. The longer ones have the sustain phase, the shorter ones don't. I could add a bit of release. List at a low end. I'll leave it to cut off. Now the first thing we will try is actually moving this time knob, which drastically affects everything. Let's put the beat back in. Move over our CV to time and open up the attenuator. Now there's elements of random in that CV that is coming from the Octo controller, drastically affecting that envelope, which is ace. Let's try CV over attack time. Now this will be a bit more regular, it's a ramp wave LFO. Adds a little whoop, a little suck, and almost feels like a little reverse. So already loads more life. Let's try that with some of the time modulated. That works really well. Let's try and CV the hold time as well. Now again, this is stepped random. Let's try that with some attack modulation. Just going to lose the beat for a second. But let's leave the kick in. Turning those down, let's finally modulate release time. This is stepped random on every 16th note in this pattern. That's high release. Let's turn up the CV. Let's mute the kick. Plays around with that low sub as this filter's cut off and the oscillator's let to bleed through. So a combination of these is going to give us a really killer and expressive envelope. We've got this varying low end with that release. Let's add some attack modulation. And when that release modulation's high, we get the attack that is regular from the LFO, but then this sweep down as well. Some hold modulation. And a bit of global time modulation too. And we could still modulate decay and sustain. Wicked. Let's add the drums back in. And one last little trick, if we take the inverted envelope output, which is already offset, biased, this goes from 0 to 5 volts. We don't have to take this negative voltage and offset it to still get the same shape. We could try that on the decay of the hi-hats. So in between the bass line, the hi-hats will open up. Let's just leave those elements soloed and add the CV to my hats. So now the envelope is dynamically going to change both the hi-hats and the bass line. Just bring the drums back in. So there hasn't been anything that I have tried with this, creating pitch effects for percussion, pitch envelopes for kicks, percussive bass lines, drones. It's done everything really well. So voltage controlled AHDSR envelope with retrigger gate, inverted out, CV over all 5 stages, linear and exponential shapes, and that global time knob and CV, which is great for influencing the whole thing. Now this will go to a maximum of 10 seconds for attack, decay and release stages, and we can have a 2.5 second hold. So we'll do long evolving envelopes really nicely as well, and go right down to a millisecond for super snappy attacks as well. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Go check out the video of the ADE50 3x VCA, which is equally fantastic. And go support me on Patreon if you'd like extra content, because those guys get extra stuff. Cheers.